Hello, my name is Haddock with the West Atlanta Watershed Alliance.
And I'm Jennifer Arnold with Reciprocity Consulting. And we want to share a little bit with you about traits of dominant white culture. This is from a body of work that's been around for several decades. We've adapted it as we've worked with groups over the years, but it's based on the original work of Tema Okun and Kenneth Jones. And really, this looks at these traits that we have here on this graphic are typically associated with success in the US. People in leadership positions are typically good at these traits. They're rewarded when they perform them well. People may be disciplined or redirected when they do not, whether they are explicitly named or not. But they're called traits of dominant white culture because they have been instrumental in building a culture and way of doing business that concentrates wealth and opportunities among white people, historically in this country, white men who own property. Often white people and white men who perform these are rewarded, but sometimes women or people of color, people with other non-dominant identities can perform them and still not measure up or be rewarded. And that's the way that these traits, so it's not to say that these traits are necessarily bad. They do lead to achievements and discoveries, but holding them up as standards of success, especially implicit standards, can limit the ability for everyone to access opportunities, wellness, prosperity, and to contribute to an organizational culture.
I'd like to call out a few, starting with the strong hero leader identity. And that's not to say that we don't want to recognize or see heroes emerge, but that rugged individual that is part of our kind of US mythos, if you will, that could have some challenges because, we often see along with that character or characterization, other traits like perfectionism, a sense of urgency, defensiveness, dependence in the power of the written word or images, that those individuals oftentimes have professional credentials or a sense of pride or martyrdom is associated with them. And so we just want to recognize that while we're not saying that heroes are bad, that people shouldn't emerge, that have these traits, that we don't recognize that these common traits of success are often found in lots of different types of people, not just white people. The creating this amalgam of almost a caricature of an individual is what might be dangerous when you're focused on these concepts alone.
Yes, and thank you for saying that, Daryl, that anyone or everyone can practice these traits. We're not at all saying that only white people practice these traits or only white people are good at them, not at all. But just that they're associated with this dominant white culture that has been foundational to our country and how our organizations and governments work. And as we've been working with these and helping people reflect on how do those traits of dominant white culture show up in myself and my organization, we've also developed these traits of inclusive culture. And we hold them up side by side as a learning tool, but we also recognize that all of us have some of the dominant traits of white culture and some of the inclusive cultural traits usually within our individual practice and within our organization. So we really ask people to reflect on how can you hold in check the traits of dominant white culture that may be shutting people down or maybe only rewarding certain people, and how do you uphold the traits of inclusive culture or lean into them or nurture them where you can within your organization. And I will say, just as a counterpoint, that traits of inclusive culture are also have a long history, and they're rooted in cultures and practices that emphasize community, shared responsibility, and long-term wellness over concentration of wealth and power.
And if we call out a few of them, we start with collaborative leaders, which was that opposite side of the coin to our strong individual leader. We also recognize that not only was that strong leader kind of bubbled out of the collective, here, our collaborative leaders are actually a part of our circle. They're part of the community. So collaborative leaders not only delegate, but they participate in ways that foster partnership and kind of moving ideas and thoughts throughout the collective. We can hold multiple truths, at the same time. Mistakes can be seen as learning opportunities and not be ostracized, the individuals, because, of things like mistakes and failures. We demonstrate multiple abilities and strengths, as well as lived experiences, not only credentials. So we can show up and see that, part of our lived experiences could be the very thing that certifies the work that we do, as opposed to only looking at, well, I'm a person of letters, for example. And data, a focus on the power relationships and witnessing that might counter just a focus on numbers and data. And then lastly, I guess I would recognize the opportunity to have constructive feedback, that we want these conversations, these containers that are created with the traits of inclusive culture to work and be interactive and even intergenerational, so that we're not singling out, individuals and perhaps prematurely retiring knowledge or wealth or individuals because they don't fit in some of those strong frames that we oftentimes recognize in the previous slide.